Ooh.
Okay. Hello.
Give us just a second.
We're going to pause for a moment while we get our sound from sounding like we're in the Grand Canyon. Check, check. Check, check. Check, check. It might be that there's too many on. Check, check. Sorry, we're trying to get our sound fixed. Check, check. Check, check. It says I'm on, but it doesn't sound like I am.
Testing 1, 2. My microphone's
Testing,
working.
Okay,
testing.
we might be good now. That's better. That's better. Madam Clerk, I will wait until you give me the thumbs up that we are ready
All
to
right,
go.
we're ready to go.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody, for hanging in there with us. We had some technical difficulties. Okay, at this time, I'm going to call to order the Monday, July 12th meeting of the Community Homelessness Advisory Board. And we are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Neil Kreutz, would you mind leading us in the pledge? Thank you very much. At this time, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
All right, Member Darden?
Present.
Member Delgado is absent. Alternate Member Reese?
Here.
Member Lawson? Member Dare,
Here.
and Member Hill and Member Lucy are absent at this time. Madam Chair, you do have a quorum of the Community Homeless Advisory Board.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll move into public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for general public comment. Madam Clerk.
All right, Madam Chair, it should be noted for the record that we received a correspondence from Laurel Swigart, which was emailed to the board on Friday. In the room, we do have Jessica Castro, Isla Bartman, and Eileen Bidwell. So Jessica, please come to the podium.
Hi. Oh, I see my time has already started. Okay, I'm going to get going because I have a lot to say. This is my worst part of doing all this. So, I have been doing outreach now. Thank you for starting right away. So, I have been doing outreach, and I have a friend who is homeless who has cancer. He just found out it's terminal. He chose to stay in a tent outside of the CARES campus because his stuff was being stolen inside. There was multiple issues. This man literally chose to stay in a tent outside while he was dying, rather than stay inside of the CARES campus. He was waiting for the safe camp. It's a little too late for him now, because the safe camp actually had its spots pre-selected by pilot partners. They were not given to the people mostly in need. I didn't stand for the Pledge of Allegiance because I don't believe in that. How can any of you stand here and say that you're on a homeless advisory board? What are you advising? Who are you standing for? I heard the term slave driver up here while I walked in the room. That's disgusting. I don't understand what's going on in the city. They don't have toothbrushes. I was advised yesterday by a pregnant lady. Her and her boyfriend have been sharing a toothbrush since they arrived. She asked me for a hygiene kit. I went to the store with my own money and purchased them. When I handed them to them, she cried. $17 million and we don't have hygiene kits. There's no laundry service for these folks, none at all, not any laundry service. The cooling station that was put in was a water jug for 500 people. Then it turned into 3 water jugs. I've been hand delivering ice water every single day to these people. That is my goal every single day, is to make sure that they're not dehydrated. So there's now bed bugs there. Another example exactly why another shelter of 500 people is not a good example. They plan on bombing the place on Wednesday. Everybody is to take their items out of the facility. Do you guys realize that's not going to work? As soon as they bring those items back, boom, infestation back. There was a sweep. I was at a sweep. Do you know why they called the sweep? Same day happened to be Devin Reese was there, Jackie Bryant was there, the officers were there. A representative from Alaska was here, because we're going to be a model for the nation is what I keep hearing in the back of my head that was told to me. This is not a model for a nation. They don't even have microwaves to warm up their food. These people are begging me to give them hygiene products. $17 million, where did it go? The day of the sweep, I watched 3 different people, Karma Box, and 2 other people tried to get someone into a facility. They were all turned away from every single facility they tried. So you're sweeping people, and there's nowhere for them to go. I have a friend right now who's outside waiting for the safe camp. He's been out of insulin for 2 days. Why? Why? Why is he on a waiting list for one of our facilities and has been out of insulin for 2 days? And why are you guys not out there? Why are you not there with me?
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
Isla Bartman, followed by Eileen Bidwell.
Okay, morning. I'll try to be quick too. So I want to tell you guys a little bit how I spent my morning. I got up today at 6:30 to try to find Kathy and bring her here to do what I think you guys should be doing, which is have the people you're supposed to be helping participating in this discussion. I haven't seen her for about a month since the Edison sweep, and a friend of mine saw her on Thursday. I went to the spot that she was supposed to be at. She was gone. I drove around for about an hour in the neighborhood trying to look for her, and I did not find her, and I'm not sure where she is. Why am I looking for Kathy in particular? Kathy was living with her husband Doug on Commercial Row. The day before the big well sweep, there was an altercation. Doug fell down. He's pretty old. I think he's in his late 60s. He got a cut, and he was hurt. I helped move him to Edison, and the next day, Doug was admitted to the hospital because he had some internal bleeding. The whole time that Kathy was staying at Edison, probably maybe about a week, she was literally biking back and forth to the hospital, back to Edison, hoping her stuff was still going to be there when she got back. Doug got better, then he got worse, then he got better, then he died. He got a respiratory infection, and he died in the hospital, probably as a direct result of that altercation. Kathy is not doing very well, and she has not been doing well, and a lot of the people that I have seen that have seen her say that she's not doing well. So the reason I am trying to get her here is to talk to you guys about her experience and to see if all the brain power and supposed compassion and everything in this room can help figure something out for her, because she needs help for real. She needs a place to live, and she needs probably more than that at this point, because she just lost her husband and she's on the street, and I don't know what she's doing. Doug used to work, I drove Kathy and Doug to Edison. I talked to them for a while, and Doug used to work up in Tahoe. He was a ski instructor at a resort, and one of the things I talked about with them when I was driving them was, hey, when's the last time you guys have been up to Tahoe, which is something that a lot of us here can enjoy a lot of the time, and I heard some conversation earlier, people had a nice weekend. I was hoping to take them up there for a day off, because I was really hoping that the Edison camp was going to give them a break from what they had been experiencing. Instead, Doug died, and he's never going to get a chance to do that again. I think that part of the issue here is the Community Homelessness Advisory Board is unfortunately taking a big picture approach and completely ignoring the reality of the situation, which is that there are individuals out there that need help, and each individual does have a different story, and each individual does have a different situation. And as long as you deal with this as a statistical question or whatever it may be, what's going to end up happening is, in your effort to eliminate homelessness, you will be eliminating the homeless. And a lot of people on the street are feeling that that's in fact the intention here. Not to make it sound too sinister, but Doug's death is convenient because now there's one fewer person to deal with. And I really, really hope that I'm not saying that anybody here was hoping for that, but that is what it seems like to people, that we're chasing people out of town, we're making it so hard and unpleasant to live here that people are feeling like the goal is for them to be removed, not from Reno, not from this, but, you know, from the planet, so to speak. So prove that that's not the case, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
Our final public commenter is Eileen Bidwell.
Good morning. Eileen Bidwell, for the record, with One Truckee River and a resident of Ward 1. I'm here today to follow up on One Truckee River's presentation on safe parking for vehicles used as homes at last month's advisory board meeting. In the past few weeks, we have sent letters to 24 local churches to ask if they might be interested in donating their property as a safe parking host site. I plan to follow up with phone calls this week. We have also purchased and received a safe parking manual and guide from New Beginnings Counseling Center of Santa Barbara, the nonprofit that started the first safe parking program in the U.S. in 2004. New Beginnings still operates and manages the program, which now includes 54 donated properties. The manual includes best practices and a step-by-step guide to establishing, operating, and managing a free safe parking program for RVs, campers, cars, and trucks. Other programs around the western U.S. consist of one large lot owned by local government, in addition to scattered sites hosted by businesses and churches. I think this model could be successful in our community. One of the outreach workers who does outreach for a living and I were counting the RVs and other vehicles that are used as homes. Just in a small part of the city, the west part of the city, fairly close to the river, and then east part of the city, we did not get to the middle yet, but we counted 92 vehicles that are used as homes just in probably about a third of the area where many of them are. Board members had also had some questions regarding insurance. how to deal with immobilized vehicles and repairs and so on. We are still trying to get answers to those questions. We should have those by next month. We'll give another update. I am hopeful that this board can use its influence to halt the towing of people's homes and belongings while a safe and legal parking program is being established. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could you be sure that we get that information that you have gathered? Oh, sure. Thank you very much. Thank you. Madam Clerk.
All right, Madam Chair, with that, we have no further public comment. We're on item 4, approval of the July 12th agenda.
Thank you very much. May I get a motion? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously.
All right, item number 5, approval of the June 7th minutes.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Item 6, the election of the chair and the vice chair. Open for discussion from my colleagues. I know we're missing some folks today, but I would entertain a motion for the chair.
Well, typically we're on rotation, and I think it is the season for Sparks to step back in, and this is our 4th chair, right? Just because back around. So I would make a motion for Mayor Ed Lawson to be the chair.
Well, I'm going to tell you, we had a discussion and the county taking the lead, and it makes it precarious for the chair to give direction to employees of another jurisdiction. And we thought that the chair should be Chairman Lucy again, so that he can give direction to the county employees. With that, we're just in that transition period, and I think that we have to honor that. And I will tell you, I'm sure Eric doesn't want me giving direction to his employees over there in the county, and I'm sure that we wouldn't feel the same way if they were giving direction to employees at Sparks. So I'm going to decline, please. I would like to install Bob Lucy again, but I'd be happy to be vice chair so that I can be in his absence to carry on the meetings.
So I guess my question is this: since the transition to the county hasn't officially occurred yet, and maybe I'm looking to our clerk and what our bylaws say, can we put in an interim chair, and then when the official transition occurs, we revisit the chair position? Is that something that our bylaws allow us to do?
I apologize, I'm looking at the bylaws as we speak.
I have a question while she looks at that, if you don't mind.
We ask
So
Eric to come up maybe?
one of the thoughts that, and this is trying to figure out their best answers, is this particular body, we don't actually totally give direction, like no one gives direction to our city employees. That comes back to us, just like it goes back to the county, just like it goes back to Reno. We tend to give it at large, kind of given the move forward and the care. I do want to say, and even if, I mean, I respect, obviously, if you think that that's what you need to do, how do we make somebody a chair who doesn't want to be the chair? So I'm not trying to say differently, but
It's not that I don't want to be chair, so don't get me wrong on that, but I'm just thinking for the smooth transition, that it makes sense to keep the county at the chair level.
But I do want to say on the louder portion of this, I think it's wise. We do have a rotation for a reason, and if we're not careful, we do want the county in lead without question. I think that's the right spot for them. We've said that for years and years, and thank you for stepping up to that. However, that lead does not dilute the leadership that any of us bring to the table, and if that's the case, then it would just seem like, if we're not careful, that it almost means that the county just stays the lead because they're always going to be the lead of this board. But I don't think that's right. I think that it should shift, and I think it should shift because of accountability reasons, collaboration reasons, investment reasons from the different cities. So I think all those things are necessary. So I just want to put that on the record and say that's my heart for it. And obviously, thank you for not making me do things I don't want to, that I don't think I should do, whatever. But I'm just saying at large the principle in my mind. Thanks.
I'd like to hear from Eric.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can we call a 5-minute recess just so that we can review this and then come back to the body with an answer?
Thank you very much. Eric, thank you.
We will reconvene at 9:30.
is some interest in, with the county taking over, that the county being the chair of this, which does make, some logical sense, but neither of the county representatives are here today, so to appoint somebody as chair whom is not here doesn't seem appropriate either. So what I would like to do is to continue this item until our next meeting, and where we can get our full membership in place.
So, Madam Chair, we do have a motion and a second at this time, so
So with that in mind, I will withdraw my motion until a better day.
And I'll
Thank you.
withdraw my second.
thank you.
So I would bring forward a motion to continue this item until our August meeting. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there on that. Okay,
right.
item 7, board presentation and discussion on the Built for Zero initiative. Dana, good morning.
Good morning. Okay, we can skip to the second slide, please. Today officially marks our 1-year anniversary of working on Built for Zero. It seems like a lot longer than that, but exactly 1 year ago, we stood in front of you and talked about all the wonderful work that was in front of us and how it was going to change our community. As we all know, it's a lot of change for us, and although we've made a lot of progress, there's still much to do. So what we're going to do today is quickly go through all of the accomplishments for the past year and then talk about where we go from here. Next slide.
Ms. Searcy, can you introduce yourself for the record, please?
Yes, I apologize. Dana Searcy, Washoe County Special Projects Manager. So accomplishments for the year. We've really worked hard to set that foundational work. How do we collect information? Where does that information live? How do we report out? That's a lot of what this foundational work looks like. And then from there, we make sure that all of the data is represented there, which we're not quite there yet. Also, our River Stewards program, that is a partnership between Truckee River Fund and Karma Box. A lot of outreach, a lot of the by name list creation work has been done through that program. Also, our regional efforts to address homelessness matrix, that effort was really to simplify for our community all of the different efforts that are being done related to homelessness and how they interact with each other. Our case conferencing. This has been a pilot program over the last 6 months for our transitioned age youth group, and will be one of the biggest focuses of our next year is expanding that across our community. This is really a change in how we match individuals to housing programs, how we truly look at each person as a unique individual and their needs and situation and where they can be successful. And then also our community inventory, we took a really detailed look at all of the housing available and how we might better utilize those resources. Next slide. A lot of these slides you've already seen in the past, but we included them again just so everybody has a good refresher. This is just a summary of that foundational work, that by name list, our outreach coverage and coordination, and then also case conferencing and how that's a little bit different than what we've traditionally done. Next slide.
The clicker right in front of you should work, I believe.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And again, the benefits, you've seen this also, of that foundational work is really to have more efficient housing placements, clear identification of the needs and the holes that exist within our community, and ultimately a reduction of unsheltered individuals. This is the graph that you've seen now for many months. We've trimmed off the first couple of months. We started showing this last year in July. And it took us a while. We had a couple of ups and downs and cleanup going on. So we've removed all of that. I would add that this list is still not inclusive of everyone. It is just everything that is inside HMIS. So you can see those numbers going up quite a bit over the past couple months. And I would say that is due to the very hard diligence from both VOA and from the Reno Clean and Safe team as they've been working to make sure that everybody is in HMIS. We're now including a breakdown by gender. About 24% of our population is female. and also a breakdown of where individuals currently are, whether they're unsheltered or unknown inside the emergency shelters or sheltered in a different way, which would be one of our transitional homes. This is the update on the River Stewards project. There's been quite a bit of trash removed from along the river, over 2,500 hours in volunteer time. And most importantly, 28 people moved off at the river and housed through this program. This is a summary of the case conferencing. And the biggest number here is that through this, 12 people were housed. Again, this was a pilot program. This is a very small section of our unsheltered by name list, I'm sorry. And the biggest part of this that we really learned was how much goes into being able to share information across different agencies. All of the MOUs and confidentiality agreements in place, who can be in the room, what it really takes to get the right people in the room so we can have conversations about specific individual needs instead of looking at this as on a grander scale and just numbers. This is just a quick summary of that community housing inventory. Again, over 3,200 total beds that are available for our houseless population. And our focus for next year is continuing to centralize that HMIS data. As I mentioned, this year really was about setting that foundation. We know where all the information goes, we know how to collect it, and now we may need to make sure that everybody's using the same tool. We need to integrate our work of Built for Zero into the COC. They are all the same people doing all the same things. We just need to bring the two different bodies of work together. And then also expand that case conferencing into our community so we can make more efficient housing placements. And then this is just a quick, this is, I would preface by saying this is just a quick glance in HMIS. There are many reasons why organizations might use HMIS or might not. A lot of them have to do with confidentiality and that kind of thing. So we have some legal stuff to work through, but this is a list of the programs that currently use HMIS for reporting. And this is a list of all the programs that do not. So when we're looking at our numbers that we're reporting, 1,600 individuals, that's why we continue to say that we know that that is not an accurate number. So we'll spend the next many years working to consolidate as much of this as we can and figure out how do we account for those who are not in HMIS. This is just a snapshot of all the different software that is used. If they're not using HMIS, where does the information go? Quite a bit of different software programs and systems to try to get integrated. And so right now, about 55% of our beds are reporting into HMIS and 40% of our programs. So of the programs that are reporting, it does encompass a lot of the larger programs, so that helps us out a bit, but we're still just over half of the programs are reporting. And that's it for today.
Thank you very much. You have a question or comment?
I have a couple quick ones. One, is it possible that part of this reporting could give us numbers on caseworkers? I think it's one of the most important pieces to this puzzle is that we have that coming alongside what's going on. And so it would be a great constant just to see what kind of caseworkers we have in our region and what's going on.
Absolutely.
And then the other piece is, are we a place where we're laying out strategy yet or just still collecting information? Because when you say 3,259 beds, my heart sinks. I mean, hearing people come forward and share what they just shared in public comment to what we see, what we know, what's our strategy? And if we're not there yet, I don't want to try to ask you to elaborate on something, but that plan, that stepping forward, it'd be good just to put one, that's probably, might be what you guys are doing next. That might be on your next portion, but it just breaks my heart to hear that.
Absolutely. So thank you for the question. When we did this, and we're reviewing those numbers every quarter, we keep them updated so we know what's happening, how many beds are coming on board, and how they're changing. When we did this in January, we had 700 beds that were open. They were available in the middle of the snow. And part of the work that we need to do, and really honestly at this point, it is a capacity thing. It's, let's get shelters open and as many people as we can helped, and then let's dig a little deeper. And so the next set of work related to these beds would be to dig in and see, why are they open? Why do they go unused? Are there barriers that could be reduced so that more people could take advantage of them?
Thank you very much. And I think that's probably one of the biggest concerns that I hear is that while we even may quickly be able to identify an open bed, there seems to be lots of barriers, right, wrong, or indifferent, for the access to those beds. And that seems to be a barrier for sure. Two questions that I have, and then I think I see Member Reese has a question. Of the entities that have not yet adopted the HMIS data reporting system, what sort of feedback are you getting? Is it that it's too cumbersome to switch, it's too expensive to switch, all of the above, they just don't want to? What's...
Both. One of the things that, yes, it is expensive. Each individual license costs about $750 a year. It can be substantial for small nonprofits. I know that the city of Reno, as the administrator, does everything they can to help anybody who's willing to get in, but it can be a lot when they first start. Another thing is that it is, we're working with some programs who say I write their name on a notepad when they come in our program and I cross it off when they come out. So getting them to use a sophisticated database that requires a lot of training and upkeep, that can be a little bit of a barrier. Other programs, if they're sobriety programs or substance abuse programs, a lot of that information is confidential. So we have to work a little bit closer. We've been told that you can put special MOUs in place in order to make those organizations a little more comfortable about who's using the data and how to get them in the system. So it is a lot of work, but we have not heard a barrier yet that can't be overcome.
Okay. And that certainly seems like a significant priority. And I know we talk about this board quite often about the data and having good data to build, programs and systems and facilities that, and that's not because we're just talking about data. We understand that by name, those data sets are individuals that have very specific needs, and we want to address those and follow up on those on an individualized basis. So the data is a person, and getting accurate information on each one of those is critically important. So I hope as we move forward, however we fund, facilitate, whatever, to get those folks on board. That was a number that I didn't realize was quite so high about how many people weren't on that system, and that's troubling. That's concerning to me. The other question I have on the graph about the community dashboard monthly reporting data, if we could put that up. I don't see page numberings on here, or I would call out the page. It's this one that shows the house. Mm-hmm. The question I have for this one in particular, so if you look at May to June, she's getting to it. This one. Yes. So we know that the shelter opened, and the numbers at the CARES facility went up by over 200, I believe, during the month of June, correct? Mm-hmm. How is this number, how did it go down?
So I would say, one, the Clean and Safe team has done an amazing job with all of the outreach that's been done over the past couple months of getting people into HMIS that currently were not. That's why that unsheltered number has gone up so much. The shelter number probably should have gone up. A lot of those people were receiving services at some point. It's about a 3-month lag here as far as where are you in the system, and if you do not touch another point within 90 days, you come off this list. So let me do a little bit of more research to figure out, when we're looking at June numbers, where would we see the changes when we know there was a significant change from May to June? Where would we see that number show up?
So you're indicating that it wouldn't show up on this graph? Because we just know the Community Assistance Center numbers in May versus June, when it went to the CARES campus, jumped some 200. I know, because we were getting daily updates on it, so that was real time, and this doesn't reflect that. So what you're saying is these numbers lag behind a bit?
Let me double check before
Okay.
I speak. I would say when you're pulling this number, you're looking at the first of the month. So the end of April is 580, and then when we look at the first of June, we're seeing that 768. That's about a 200 jump right there. That's the number from May 1st to June 1st. So that's 200 over May when it first opened. Now,
Okay.
why it came down in June, I can't answer that right now. So
Okay.
let me look
Okay.
into that.
All right, thank you. Member Reese?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Searcy, thank you for the presentation. Always important information that you're sharing. Can we first look at the slide that you identify as existing beds units, total 3259? I guess I want to make a point and then see what we can do in the future moving forward. You've identified folks as male or female, and I think you're leaving out the trans or non-binary community. So I want to make sure that there is a more nuanced understanding of gender, certainly, in these numbers, because I believe we have folks who fall into those two categories at least. And so if we can, please, I'd like to see that reflected in future slides.
Absolutely, we can do that. What you're looking at here are beds that are specifically listed for males and females, but that's a fantastic point, and we will go back.
Well, and I think the incident of violence against transgender individuals in this country is at an alarming rate. And so if we aren't acknowledging that in the way that we build programs for people, then we really haven't solved that issue, or at least identified the problem so that we can work towards solutions. So that's the first thing. Second, I don't understand the 3259 number. And we get a lot of numbers as elected officials. And unfortunately, the numbers are sometimes a moving target, which makes it hard to design programs effectively, I think. And so when you say there are 3,259 beds in the greater Reno-Sparks, Washoe County area, what are you saying there? Those are, and then the other thing is that doesn't tell me anything if I don't know what the vacancy is. Like, of those 3,259, how many of those are occupied currently?
Absolutely. So this website at the bottom, and I did not go back through this entire presentation again. I absolutely can. We can come back and go through it. I know when you hear it a couple times, it starts to click. We're keeping that website up to date. Of those beds, when we did this, over 700, about 750 were vacant. These beds include everything that would be considered emergency shelter, or what we're calling temporary. That would be anything in your transitional or bridge or community living homes, anything that is meant to be temporary in nature, and then also our permanent supportive and rapid rehousing programs.
And so the HMIS data page that you showed where it identified all the different community organizations, are those where these beds exist?
Yes, so when you have all of those lists, when we go back over here, that's how we knew that the program existed and they are not in HMIS. So this list here and this list here make up 3,200 beds in our community.
Okay, and I think that's something that we can be proud of, but the problem is that I am hearing people who come to the podium who say, this specific individual cannot find a bed.
Absolutely.
And that for me is not an unacceptable reality, and as I know it is not for you or any of us up here. So I'm trying to understand, if someone comes and says, I have a terminal illness, I need a bed, we can't find one in this 3259 for that person, or what am I supposed to say to people who come with that concern?
So currently in our community, we do not have an easy way to determine what is open and who most appropriately would fit into that resource.
And so what do we need to do to get that easy way?
No, you're complete. That's where we need to go, is all of our information in one place, a clear understanding of what resources we have. That's the basics of Built for Zero. And then that next step is really this case conferencing, where people come to the table each week and they say, I have an individual, I have a very special circumstance and I need a bed. And the people who have beds are there having a conversation too, asking questions back and forth about one person, not a list of people, and how they can be helped.
So you're talking like, a gathering place where all the providers are there.
Yes.
Like a job fair almost, but a housing fair.
Yes.
When are we doing that?
So we have started with our transitional age youth, that 18 to 24 population. We are identifying the next couple groups to do that with. Another big piece of this is that we all know we haven't really had that hub of where do we go with individuals, whether they're coming from, being discharged from jail or the hospital, and they don't know where to go. Where does that happen? And that really is the idea of this resource or day center that'll be at the CARES campus, is that anybody at any time can walk into that and get help and figure out where is the next step, how do I get into a bed that is appropriate for me.
And then my last question, Madam Chair, thanks for the indulgence. I don't get the opportunity to sit on this body, so with the time I have, I'd just like to get some answers. I had the ability or opportunity to go to Hope Springs this week and see some of the work that they're doing there, and it's very impressive. But something that's discouraging to me is the number of vacancies there. And so this is a program that certainly the city and the county, and I actually think the city of Sparks also had a role in funding to make sure it was successful. And as I dug a little deeper, what I learned is that they have, like a 6-week interview process for people to be able to get into one of the small, tiny homes, and that they've interviewed, maybe 200 was the number, and out of that 200, like 3 qualified. That cannot be. I just don't understand how either we've got to change the models or delivery. I understand that they are predicating their success on the way in which they bring people in, but we had a person who went through the 5 or 6 week process, and I guess they crashed out at the mental health evaluation intake. And so we either need more places like Hope Springs, which have different barrier access routes, or we need to figure out how our partners can be more successful, but putting more people into the units, because having vacant units while other people are sleeping in tents is very painful to acknowledge. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I too, I think we've all kind of struggled with the barriers and why the CARES facility is so successful at this point is because they're not turning anybody away. And while there may be a more perfect and more appropriate place for those individuals to be, it's sometimes difficult to locate. You just identified that identifying where that suitable open bed is, and then whether or not what the barriers are for that bed that may be open is really a sticking point. And the CARES campus has really stood in the gap of all of that, even though it was supposed to be men and couples and pets. I think we have 55 women there now, which is not ideal, which was not the intention, which was not the plan. But we are standing in the gap, and VOA is doing stellar work of not turning people away. And it's while we're kind of figuring out the details and the nuances of all these things. And that to me is, I too have, I got an email yesterday over the weekend saying, we've got pregnant woman living in her car, and she needs a bed, and what is the number for a Sunday at 8:30 p.m. to help these people get resources? And I think we as a region have always struggled with that. And you say that this resource day center sounds fantastic, but what happens with the 11 p.m. call of the situational sort of stuff? We need to fix that part of it. I think we took the big steps in getting the facility, and now we need to work on how we appropriately and quickly transition people into a safer place as best we can. So thank you for your work on that. I know the last year has been a lot of getting data and putting data into a system and getting our hands around where the silos were, where the duplications were, and where Built for Zero, which has been successful across the nation, can move forward. And now we are in that spot, and I'm excited to see that all start to come to fruition. So thank you. Member Lawson.
I think, I understand the frustration, but I think back to 3.5 years ago when we first took this on. We were so siloed up that no one would talk to each other, and there was more than 700 beds were going unfulfilled. So this board has done a good job in my mind of bringing all those people into the same room. So now we're at least having the conversation. My question though, Dana, is how many of those folks that are on the provider list that you have there are still not using or still not coming to a central, that are continuing to be in their silo? Do you have any a clue on that?
Sure, I think everybody is honestly excited to participate, willing to participate. Nobody that we spoke with during this was a like 2-hour interview process for each person. They're very detailed. You know, do you allow women? Do you allow pets? Do you allow somebody that is now coming with a health concern? You know, all of these 25 lines of questions. Nobody said, I don't want to come to the table. I don't want to play. Leave me alone. You know, everybody said, this is so exciting. We're so glad to hear that everybody's working together, this new campus, all of this change and transition. And I don't even think that it isn't that people haven't been doing any work for so long, because obviously that's not true. It's mostly just, I think, whether you call it Built for Zero or, hey, guess what? All 3 organizations are working together. When you shine something new, it allows people to get excited and come to the table and say, hey, I said this 5 years ago and maybe it wasn't true then, or maybe it couldn't be addressed then. But now I'm still having that same problem, and can we work through it? And that one of the very significant barriers to HMIS is that it currently does not have a very robust case management program. We know how important that is to keep case notes and that kind of thing. And so one of the things we're going to have to work through as we move forward is how do we truly transition HMIS, or to what point can we transition it to also capture that case management piece, because that would allow people to only use HMIS. At this point, a lot of these organizations would have to track an HMIS and also use another program for case management. That's a lot of duplicative work that they do not have the time to do. So it's that kind of piece, but everybody's at the table, and whether it's Built for Zero or the COC or all the local meetings that occur, I think that all of these organizations in some way are today at the table working with us.
That was going to be my next question, is then how many of them don't have the HMIS? And is that something that we could do as the entities to say, we're going to give you an incentive to do it, and here's your incentive?
Here's your list. It's a big list. And we're all going to work through it together, and we're going to address as many as you can. And I think that a lot of you have reached out and said that you'd be willing to help incentivize, or whatever it takes. Do we need to build HMIS out a little bit more? How do we encourage these organizations to come along with us and help? Because really, a lot of times we go back to Built for Zero. Well, what do you think? What do you think our problem is? Where's our hole? And they say, I don't know, because you don't have all your data in one piece, in one place. I can't see the problem in its entirety. So.
And that's what we've been trying to do for this 3.5 years. So
Yes.
it's we need to figure out, and I know I can't commit for the city manager, but this is a priority for us to get the information together so that we can put round pegs in round holes. And that's been the whole issue all along, is you might make all the qualifications except one to get a bed, and we say, well, can't take you. But there should be a suggestion of where you can go.
Mm-hmm.
So, or a centralized location. So that having that information is key, even from the police level, the contact on the street level from that point on, so that we know we're not duplicating efforts. And we know that John has X issues and needs this type of care. And when he hits the door for services, we have a plan ready for him.
Right.
So,
Yes.
anyways, good job. It's putting this in perspective. This has not been easy. It's been a long and hard road, but I think this board has made it easier to bring everybody in the same room.
Well, I think if this is indicative of, when you dive into these issues, just how deep and complex and diverse the issues are, and this list is just an example of, while you've got many on HMIS and moving in that direction, how many still exist that we need to, for all the right reasons, need to play in the same sandbox so we can most effectively address, resource-wise, capital-wise, all of that. So I am with Member Lawson that we need to figure out how to persuade these folks to quickly get onto the HMIS system, whether it's resource-based, whatever it is that they need to be trained up. I think that's important. The other thing in the future, which would be beneficial because it is a new offering that we have not globally sort of had in the past, is to also identify how we're trend lining with couples and pets. In other words, we've got men, we've got women, but we need to also start tracking couples in the region and pets, because that is something I've watched at the CARES campus. The number of pets has gone up. And that would be an interesting thing. Again, we want to put our resources in the correct place, and the way we do that is by having accurate data. So thank you. Member Reese.
Yeah, just a moment of clarification, and I know that we've got other presentations coming. The Village on Sage Street, of course, is not a homeless facility. It's a housing facility, so I don't know why it would be included in HMS reporting.
So that is a very fair point. I would say this is everybody who was included in those open bed. And again, that's very different from what HUD would define as a homeless available bed in our community. We looked at where are beds and where might people go for various reasons. So that is true. They would not be putting data in on these individuals, but what we could benefit from them is how many units are open and criteria and that kind of thing in a central place. Right now across our region, if you want to find out, you got to make a phone call, and we have to address that. We know that is a pretty complex task in front of us, and so it's mostly a partnership. There's a couple more up there that are similar to that. This is the list in its entirety.
But you wouldn't expect them to have HMIS reporting obligations, or you're saying they do have those, and they voluntarily do it, or?
No, honestly, I think, to be fair, Village on Sage is the most complex program on this. You've picked the one because you're close to it and you know the details. We have argued this back and forth whether or not to put this on the list or not, but it is a resource, and so that's why it's here. But that's a fair point that those individuals are housed and maybe would not be an HMIS.
Except that is a great resource, which we have placed individuals straight from the street into Sage Street because they have some level of income. So
Absolutely.
to exclude them would also be detrimental as well.
I just have one quick thought on that. One thing that might be wise, because I'm sure if that's there, I'm sure you could probably think of probably 5 more on there. Maybe just another list that says friends of or some supporting, so we can have even amongst ourselves accurate data. Because looking at this, it looks daunting to have so many people. It almost seems like you say they're working together, but it looks like they're not. I just want you to know what my heart sinks when I go, oh my gosh, that many are not. But if that's not true, let's make sure we're looking at accurate. Pull the ones off of here that we're not looking for HMIS on. It could be another one that says, here are our future partners. We see reasons to work with them, but it's not the reporting. Because those are for me, two whole different conversations. Mm-hmm. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, did we have any public comment on that item?
No public comment.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you.
Moving on, item 8, board update and discussion on Nevada CARES Campus. Mr. Thornley, you're up. Manager Thornley.
Good morning. I'm Doug Thornley. I'm the city manager in Reno. Ms. Huntsman's going to pull up that slide deck, and I'm going to try to not mess up the clicker. But you get this meeting, or this update at this meeting is a standing agenda item because the community's made a significant investment in the CARES campus. Sort of turning anything of this scale on always comes with its bumps and bruises, and so as we work through those, we want to keep you apprised of what's going on. So you can see the averages, the highlights there on the right side of the slide. This goes back to the opening of the campus. The count this morning as of 8 a.m. Is that there are 128 empty beds. There are 476 people taking advantage of the shelter at the CARES campus presently. 396 of those are single men, 48 of those are single women, and there are 16 couples. You'll see on the next slide sort of what we're doing with pets. You'll see the average there says less than 10, but I can tell you that on a daily basis right now, we're hovering right about 10 pets of various types. I believe at the moment it's 8 dogs and 2 cats. We have had some hiccups in terms of what the count looks like on a daily basis. I believe we have resolved that. We now have accurate numbers. VOA has graciously made some adjustments to their intake and exit process, so we know what's going on and are better able to manage the data that we have coming forward regularly. Member Dare asked earlier about case managers. We talked about that the last time I was in front of you all. Right now, there are 6 VOA case managers. They have all made the trip down 4th Street from the old CAC to the CARES campus. VOA finished up interviewing. They're going to hire 3 more here in the relatively near future. As we discussed last time, 9 case managers is not ideal, and we are working on how we might get more folks to take up that cause as a place to work and a place to help the community. Importantly, since the last time I've been here, Wi-Fi is now up and running. That does make the job of the case managers easier there at the CARES campus. Starting today, a full-time Medicaid worker will be on the site 5 days a week. RISE and Washoe County Human Services are on site every Wednesday to help us transition single women out of the CARES campus and into our place. A lot of that has to do with the communication between the CARES campus and the Our Place site. I believe we have improved that process, and we have improved the options for transportation between the two. I do think it's important, though, that we mention that it's not just transportation for moving folks from the CARES campus to our place. We do have transportation options available for folks who need to get to the CARES campus to take advantages of some of the services that are offered there, regardless of whether or not they're staying. Both the Reno Clean and Safe team, RTC, has been gracious in that respect, and I would ask that if any member of the community becomes aware of a person who, for whatever reason, is struggling with transportation and getting connected to services, that they let our staff know, because we will bend over backwards to make certain that they are able to get to the services that they need. It's not a secret that it's been hot for about the last couple weeks. It's going to stay hot this week, and despite the fact that we're advertising it as cooling off at the end of the week, it's not going to be particularly cool. There are 3 outdoor cooling units at the campus right now. Think like a porta-cool, like you'd see on a football sideline. It's a fan with a mister. The air conditioning inside the shelter is working exactly as designed and as planned. There is ice and water on site, and it is replenished regularly to make sure that people have access to those services to regulate their temperature. The last time I was here, we were relying heavily on portable toilets and hand washing stations, and while those are still available, the toilets have been replaced with high-grade pressurized units, so that situation is improving. The storage unit ramp, you can see from the picture, is up and is functional. Added fencing on the campus exists so that it is more manageable, particularly in the intake and security trailer right there by the primary entrance. A question that we get a lot is, how much is this costing? The answer is, of course, a whole bunch. You can see the breakdown of the operational expenses that we have right now at the CARES campus highlighted on that slide. We don't need to go through all of them, but just in terms of what that looks like, you see the costs associated with the temporary shelter, which was in place for the bulk of the pandemic and has now been removed from right there on the Tumwa parcel on 4th Street. All of these expenses that are not covered by CRF dollars are covered by the ILA that was signed by the group in November 2020.
Can you say for the record what those initials are, because most people don't know?
Oh, I'm sorry. The ILA is the interlocal agreement. The CRF is what's colloquially known as the CARES Act. So coronavirus something relief funding. By and large, these expenses exist in response to many of the desires and requests from the community to make sure that we're able to better accommodate our guests at the campus and get those wraparound support services in place so that it is a successful endeavor. An itemized list of these expenses is being prepared by staff and will be available on a line item basis in relatively short order. Tomorrow, there's going to be a mobile vaccine clinic taking place. You should be looking at social media for more information there. The Community Health Alliance clinic is canceled. We just didn't have time to update this slide this morning. That was a last-minute thing. But I think importantly, too, one of the barriers that we see in terms of bringing pets to the campus is that perhaps their vaccines are not up to date. And so the animal wellness clinic there on the right side of the slide, I think, is particularly important. And again, be looking to social media for more information on those events. And so while I do invite questions, I will not push the button one more time to get to the gaudy questions slide. What can I answer for you this morning?
Thank you very much. Member Reese.
Okay, Mr. Thornley, thank you for the update. A couple of things. One, as to the costs, is there a way for us to share with our community a very detailed breakdown of those costs? And as I look at the costs that you've identified there, you're essentially identifying increased costs. But as I understand it, we're now at 16.9 million. 8 million of that was land. About $7 million has been the shelter construction, and then 1.9 is basically what I'll call operating expenses. So I'm trying to understand, people want to know what the money is being spent on. Do we have a way to put that budget up online and some tracking mechanism for it?
Yes, I believe that it's been published in previous agendas, whether through the joint meeting process or other things. But we can create some social media slides that we can share with the community that talk about how we got to where we are today and what it costs. Yes.
Okay. The second thing is, as to the summer heat, you've mentioned it, and in fairness, I've been fairly critical, harassing your office about the heat issues. So why don't we have a regional cooling center program? Like, why don't we have something that helps us to identify places where people can get out of the heat, whether that's, I suppose it's libraries, it's the senior centers that are various locations. A lot of our buildings as the city of Reno are occupied by summer programming, right? We've got, Sierra Kids and summer camp programs in them. But I'd like to know a little bit more about that, because those regional cooling centers, of course, then become warming centers in the colder months. And it just seems like we don't have a robust regional strategy for dealing with either cooling or heating.
We do not. I think that that's a fair observation and a fair criticism. My understanding in this moment as to why there is not a more robust strategy as it relates to regional heating and cooling stations is that is a policy decision that had been made by previous councils and previous administrations. And so we've heard you. You are not wrong that you have been sort of the tip of the spear on this issue, at least as it relates to me. And we are evaluating what those options could look like.
So for my part, and because I won't be sitting here the next time this body meets, I think that this body has got to have some involvement in both of those issues, cooling and heating, right? Obviously, cooling is particularly difficult currently because of the heat, because of the fires, because of the air quality. But I would think it would be something for this body to take up as a regional approach. And of course, our county folks, I know that I've spoken to them and have the same concerns. And so it appears that there's some political will to do something better or more than we have done in the past. And so I'll leave that to you and the other managers and the members of this body to take up going forward. Thank you.
If I might have one moment. I think what you saw from Ms. Searcy's presentation is some of the challenge in getting the Built for Zero initiative off the ground over the past year is that one of the reasons perhaps we have not enjoyed as much success as we might like in terms of connecting people with housing and getting them with the supportive services that they require is that in this community we have a number of well-intentioned organizations and people who sort of go scattershot. And so sort of the benefit of the Built for Zero model is that we can get to that targeted strategy. I heard you all mention that in one way, shape, or form during her presentation. I think this is sort of an offshoot of that, and I envision regionally this would be the first stop in terms of coming up with a strategy.
Well, and as to cooling, though, I understand that the shelter is going to have to close down on Wednesday for a number of hours for, I don't know exactly what it is, but it sounds like it's some kind of spraying. I mean, people who are currently in a cool building have to go somewhere else for the day. And so I'm trying to understand if we have a plan in place for that. Is there anything you can speak to this morning, or is it something you're familiar with or aware of about this, I guess, the spraying issue on Wednesday?
Of course, the spraying is not atypical. That's an ordinary operational feature of sheltering people. It is a prophylactic. It is not a measure that is responsive to any sort of existing issue. It is one to make sure that we don't end up with an issue. And so, with respect to folks being out of the building while that is going on, that is a topic of conversation that we'll be having on the 15th floor later today.
Thank you very much. And I do think, I mean, I will kind of step back a minute, and we have at this board talked at great length about the warming centers, and VOA has a program of warming centers and cooling centers in place. I'll tell you what I don't think we've done a good job of, and this is indicative of many things and the great work that we're doing. We have not communicated it in a single, easily digestible, way to disseminate information to those that need it probably the most, and who's giving that information, and how is it in an easy and quickly accessed, real-time sort of situation. I think we have a number of cooling and warming centers, but we've not done a good job of communicating where those are on a incident basis or a monthly basis or a weather situation basis, and that is something we need to find the best way to get that information out to those who need it most in the most effective way. So I do think we do need to improve on that. Member Dare.
Yes, I want to point out too, and I appreciate this conversation because obviously these are immediate needs and very real needs. But I do want to say that I don't believe always the government's the answer, that us spending money is always the answer. It's part of the answer. But we have a whole community out there, and we keep talking about churches and places. And in a sense, because of what we're doing, a lot of what they have done in the past, we're asking them to not do that. Now, don't go to the river, don't do that. However, some of them still really do want to find areas to serve. And so I would just, if they're out there listening, that's one of my encouragements, is to say, here's an area you could potentially open up something at your church. We have more buildings in this place than we need, actually, in our community to help everyone that need with good-hearted people, if we could just figure out how to work together. And so that's a challenge probably to my fellow pastors and my people out there, or even 501c3s or whatever, people who are available. But I also want to challenge us that we sometimes our first answer is just to go spend money. And I think that the combo, I mean, I'm not saying we're not responsible, please. I'm not saying anything bad about us having stations or do whatever. But I strongly believe we're going to be stronger together. And we actually, I believe what I've seen in my life, we will help each of these individuals a lot more when we can put people around them like those 501c3s and churches and people who can help. So just a thought, but I also want to do a shout out. If you're out there listening, you're a pastor or involved in the community, you're looking for something to do. These are very active ways to do this, but it means we kind of have to create that safe space, that infrastructure that allows people to help us. So thanks.
Thank you very much. One of the commenters, I think we have worked through a number of the sort of the intake kinks, the restroom issues, which are now rectified. We've got the pet situation down. We've got cooling inside and outside. The one thing is the laundry. What is happening with the laundry?
Laundry continues to be an open issue there at the CARES campus. It is certainly one that is top of mind. What is probably the ultimate solution there is another container with commercial grade facilities inside of it. I believe we have a number there, and we're working through what the permitting and connection fees look like.
Okay.
And we'll get that resolved in as short order as we possibly can.
Thank you very much. And I know it's not on our agenda, but it's tied directly to this. There has been significant movement on the private side fundraising for a lot of these efforts and facilities, and we'll be getting an update on the successes of that, which includes some of the faith-based folks and foundations which are stepping up in a very significant way to make Phase 2 have all the things that we want to see there. So, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Thornley, not quite so fast. Madam Chair, can we go back to the cooling centers issue for a minute? Mr. Dare wisely pointed out that, we have other folks to rely upon. I just want to know what we're going to do this week. And I understand that sounds like a conversation you'll have later today. But this isn't new. The community members brought this to our attention last summer. They brought it to our attention in the winter. So I can't keep saying to people we're working on it if we are not working on it. So I trust that you'll go back, at least as to your role defined here today, to figure that out. The second thing is the laundry trailer is something also that I think is an important one. And I know that the costs have been, higher than we anticipated when you've looked into it. But we're running out of options, right? We can't keep shuttling people back to the old CAC to do laundry there. I believe that the Safe Camping and the Karma Box folks are basically doing some individual laundry runs for folks that are staying there. There have been community groups that are also, I think, essentially washing folks' laundry at their homes and bringing them back. And so these are great things, but we don't have time to coordinate all of the private and churches to do it. There's a critical need, I think, for laundry. Obviously, when you start talking about bed bugs as an issue, when you have bed bugs, of course, and unfortunately I've had some experience with it, you're talking about washing in high heat washing machines, your clothing multiple times, and the bedding and all those things. So while I understand that you've said that the spraying that's going to go on Wednesday is more routine and prophylactic, I want to make sure that as to laundry, this is one of the chief concerns that we continue to hear, and a barrier both people being there and also staying there successfully. Because if they drop in for a night and figure out that they can't really do the things they want to have happen there, then we have lost their, it's like customer service. We have lost their ability to believe that that facility is the right place for them. So as to these two things, cooling and laundry, although again, I may not be here to ask from the dais in this way, I will continue to be asking you individually. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment on that item?
We have none registered.
Okay, moving on. Item 9, board update and discussion on the Nevada Cares Campus Safe Camp. Dana Searcy.
Just can't get rid of me.
I know. I'll get you again.
Dana Searcy, Washoe County Special Projects Manager. Safe Camp update for this week. So far, so good. So again, what we're really trying to balance is the need to move people off the river and all of the reasons why that is important, and then also finding effective ends to homelessness and just not having a camp that we're not seeing movement into permanent housing. When we were first asked to do this project, we went and did some site evaluation, and as you are all very much aware, that was very expensive to get all the infrastructure and ADA access and emergency vehicle access into the bowl. We knew it would take quite a bit of time to do that, so we developed a temporary site, which opened on June 17th. And that site will remain open until the long-term camp is finished. We are still hoping for before the snow flies. The site focuses, number one, on finding permanent housing. And these are all of the other things involved in the camp. We won't go through each one, but essentially it is an outdoor emergency shelter. These are a few pictures from the camp as it stands today. The tents, the shade area, and those are the cots inside the tents. A few of the things that we're working with, very much like what you just heard, cooling. Cooling is a tremendous issue outside when we're camping. So we too have installed misters underneath the shade tent. We've battled and debated how to add additional shade across the tents. And the reality is that it really is so much space and so much land that it is difficult to shade every single tent. And that's why we added our shade tent. I would also like to thank Monica at the City of Reno and her staff. She has also offered for all of the Safe Camp participants to be able to go over and use the AC and the ice over at the main campus. So people are being shuttled over as they're requesting. There's also plenty of water and cool drinks throughout the day. Another thing that we're battling, not something you're unfamiliar with, is staffing. It's very difficult to staff up. We've opened this camp and we continue to bring people in, and Karma Box has struggled to find employees that stay on for more than just a few days. So we're still working with that, and once we're fully up and running, I think we can evaluate the capacity of the space and all of that, but just know that that is something we're struggling with. Also, capacity. We knew that this would be a popular option from the very beginning. The outcry has been encouraging, honestly. When John DeCarmine came to visit us, he gave us all these things to incentivize people to come in to our Safe Camp, and I said, I don't really think that's going to be our problem. So know that we're very much aware that the more capacity, the better. We are balancing that with the staffing that is available, the space that is available, and our ability to have enough case management that we can continue people finding those permanent homes versus just making sure that they're safe in their tent. So that's what we're balancing, but finding more capacity is definitely going to be a priority for us. Laundry also is a challenge. So Karma Box, every Wednesday, they take people to the laundromats and ensure that is an option for them. Right now, it's a small enough amount of individuals that it's very manageable. We will see how that continues in the future. And then also, we just instituted, now that we're up and running, our participant advisory board for this continuous feedback loop of how are things going and what do we need to address quickly. Our application process has been one of much discussion. I would like to share with you today mostly that the process, it's a pre-approval process, and it exists absolutely not because there are any barriers, but really for two main reasons. One, we don't want anybody to pick up all their belongings and come all the way across town only to be told that we don't have space for them. And second, we know that there's a lot of programs with very long waiting lists, several hundred long waiting lists, and we don't want anybody to turn away or turn down another bed because they're on the list for the Safe Camp, and we know it might take months and months for them to get in there. So that's why it exists. Each week, we evaluate how many beds are open. We release applications to our partners that are listed there. These are current organizations that do outreach in the community. And we're also working to target areas of need. So last week, the area was definitely outside of the CARES campus. Most of the applications that were released went specifically to that area. So we have not turned anybody away. Nobody, there's no, like I said, no barriers, just a willingness to be working on a housing plan. These numbers were as of Friday. There are currently this morning 28 individuals in the camp, 9 women and 19 men. There are 5 more scheduled to come in this afternoon. We're currently at 4 cats and 2 dogs. One of our concerns with pets right now is there's not enough space inside to allow pets to be left. It's also really hot. So a dog getting left in a tent while somebody needs to go to work or run an errand is not something that we're prepared to deal with at this point. So we're dealing with any animals that can be brought with their owners as they move about the day. But it is our intent to take any animal that is on our list. This is a drawing of what the future long-term site will look like in the bowl. We're at about 75% of all of the engineering drawings and everything else, hoping to get that construction going pretty quickly again to open that up before the snow comes. And then this is just our timeline that's on our website, and we are still on schedule, although it'll be really tight, but that is the goal, is late fall, hopefully in November or early December, to open up that longer term camp. And with that, I will take any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that update. Thank you for giving us kind of the status on that. I know everybody's really excited about the Safe Camp facility, and I appreciate the county moving forward with the temporary interim site. Not ideal for sure, but necessary. And I know that the bigger site, once completed, will be far more robust. I did, a theme that I'm hearing here today, and certainly nothing that is shocking news that everybody's suffering with now, is the staffing. There is not a business you can go by that doesn't have a help wanted sign hanging out there, and we are not immune to that. And finding individuals that have it in their hearts to want to do this work, this critically important work, we're finding it quite difficult. And we're not immune as government to be suffering through some of the staffing issues as well. And we're doing everything within our power to find creative, incentivizing, ways in which to make these positions more attractive, because they are so critically important. And anyway, I know that you're struggling with that, and we are as well. Everybody is.
Everybody is.
Welcome to a tough labor market. Do you have any questions or comments?
Just briefly, Ms. Searcy. So as to safe camping, the idea here is the pilot program. What are the conversations that are being had about expanding either locations, meaning multiple sites, or various subpopulations? I've seen safe campgrounds, for example, for veterans specifically, who are oftentimes dealing with PTSD, which means it's very difficult for them to be in a larger facility where there's not a lot of privacy. So I am trying to understand, is it the idea to see how this one goes and then perhaps put them at various places? And then how do we combine that with, at least, and you heard one of the public commenters talking about safe parking and safe RV. So, and I'm someone who believes that we should have both of those. Sometimes those come because churches allow their parking lot to be used during a particular period of time during the day, and they allow their restrooms or sometimes shower facilities to be used also. So where are we headed with the safe camping option?
Sure. Yes, this initially was a pilot program. I think that since those conversations have started, well over a year ago, and now that we have been full in this for the last several months, our partnership with John Carmine from Florida led us to all of that together has really led our staff to the understanding, and I think all of us collectively appreciate that the safe camp option brings an option that we have not had previously in our community. There are a lot of people that going into a shelter with 500 people is not something that they will ever do. But that option to take, their things, move into a tent, have a little bit more privacy while we're building that trust and looking for something a little more permanent. Obviously, nobody wants them outside, but at their pace and at their need level. I think that we're all under the understanding that that's absolutely critical in our community to offer that option. As far as our desire to expand, I think like all of us, if something's working well, then the commitment will be there to continue to find more space. What we've learned is that it is more successful when they are smaller units put together, not very large, 100, 200 unit tent sites have a harder time seeing those housing rates. So right now, what we are currently discussing is we've got this temporary site up at the top. We've got 44 tents in that site. Like I said, we're at 28 today, hopefully over 30 by the end of the day. Once that's full, we're going to evaluate every little nook and cranny up there. Is it reasonable to bring in more people? We think we've got a place for pets, that kind of thing. Try to get that capacity up to 50. No guarantees, but it looks like there may be some space there. The next step will be that permanent in the bowl infrastructure. That'll be another 50 tents. What we're playing with is the opportunity to keep both sites open, at least for the time being, because we know that the need right now is so grand. That is additional staffing and costs that we have not talked about across our region, and whether or not we would like to do that, but it is an option that we're going to have. And then beyond that, if it's successful, finding other locations that we can take the model that is now housing placements and moving them across the city and popping up another one as needed, that kind of thing, I think is also very much something that we could do. Part of that is infrastructure, right? You got to have the showers and the restrooms, and it's not just standing huts and that kind of thing. So that would be a struggle, but not out of the question.
Thank you very much. Member Dare.
My question with animals, have we tried to work with the local animal shelter, Washoe County's? This is, it's tax money. They get tax money for us, for our community. I know that's different than what they've done in the past, but it just seems like some of our collaboration should be with some of our local people already. And do you need us to ask that? I don't mind having the conversation with somebody if necessary.
Yeah, our regional animal services, Washoe County Regional Animal Services, has been phenomenal. They have been out to the Safe Camp. They've been out to the CARES campus. We've got a team. Obviously, they are helping our place as well. So we've got some dedicated staff that pay attention to what's happening and the needs of these different emergency shelters and how they can respond. All of this is on top of workloads already that were existing, as we all know. So they're trying to squeeze us in any way they can. They're trying to offer different options for other capacity. I would say everybody bought a lot of things last year, and one of those things were pets. So while we were all at home, everybody bought a dog, and now we have veterinary limitations. So finding resources for everybody has been a challenge, but we're working very closely with them. They're out, like I said, multiple times at these campuses and doing anything they can. As far as boarding dogs, I think we're all getting pretty creative with, we have a bed, but you can't bring a dog. Do you have a friend? Do you have, where can we put the dog? A lot of people don't want to leave their dog, and that's part of this too. So we are looking at the kennels over at Hope Springs. We've brought some people over. Those kennels have been working pretty well to keep dogs cool when they need to be cool. We'll see how they work over the winter, but the idea is really to build a dog kennel area where it's safe enough that they can leave their dog and they can go to work. Because if they can't get to work, now we've taken in the dog, but we're putting more barriers on them, so that isn't helping them either. So. Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I think that's a safe camp. Do we mind, can we take, I know the next item, we're going to go a little bit long today. The next item is a really important one that we're going to set up about the transition. But can we take a 3-minute break? Because I'm afraid if one person gets up, we're going to break the quorum, right? Okay, so we're just going to take a 3-minute quick break. Thank you. Okay, Madam Clerk, we will call this meeting back to order.
All right, Madam Chair. There was no action needed on the last item, so we're on item 10, unless there was more discussion that was needed. Great, so we're on item 10, which is a board update discussion and possible recommendation to staff related to the interlocal agreement for shelter operations and other homeless services.
Good morning once again. Doug Thornley, I'm the city manager here in Reno. My colleagues, Mr. Kreutz and Mr. Brown, are seated here in the audience if you have specific questions for them. We had hoped that we'd have a more robust update for you this month. What I can tell you is that we continue to discuss the interlocal agreement and what that transition might look like. I think we do have it basically in place now, down to just what the capital contribution for that phase 2 might look like. It is my most sincere hope that we will have a final update for this board and a presentation on what the skeleton of that framework looks like for consideration by all of the jurisdictions at the next CHAB meeting in August.
So our update is no update.
Yeah, that's basically it. Situation normal.
Okay, so we'll put that on for our next agenda for an update on the transition. Member Reese.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So because I have not been as closely involved in the ILA as other members of my body, I don't have very robust questions, but I suppose the question occurs to me to ask that as we transition to the regional approach in this way, which I think is a long time coming, and I really do thank our county and City of Sparks partners for that. I think some people in the community have asked me, as to Reno's part, our goal is not to walk away from the problems that we see happening in the city of Reno, right? I mean, our goal is to focus on a different aspect of that problem. So the goal of the ILA, of course, is to share costs related to a thing for a period of time. Is there anything that we should anticipate as either the CHAB or as the city of Reno in understanding what the changes will come once that transition has been made?
Yeah, hold on, give me a second so I don't just word vomit at you. The point of this ILA is to adequately define and support the transition from the lead on sheltering services from the city of Reno to Washoe County. Now, that's sort of fraught with hurt feelings. It's important that you understand that at present, Washoe County, the city of Reno, the city of Sparks all share in the expense of sheltering and providing some wraparound services. And that is largely defined by the existing interlocal agreement, the bulk of which at present is the VOA agreement. But in so doing, one of the reasons, there are many, but one of the reasons why perhaps there is a dearth of affordable housing options in our community, in our region, is that for several decades, the cities have used CDBG funds and HUD funds to support the sheltering operation rather than pursuing these other housing options and supporting them. And so what we are trying to accomplish in this iteration of this longstanding interlocal is supporting financially for one more year the sheltering operation, and then having the county take over both the operations, which is presently overseen by the city of Reno, and the financial responsibility for the sheltering in this community. And so it's a trick, but I think we're close.
But I guess ultimately then the question is that those funds that would have otherwise been allocated by the cities through their CDBG or home fund allocations or however they got them, those then would be available for other things like permanent supportive housing. That's what you're saying.
That's the theory under which we are working, yes. That is what we are trying to accomplish.
So the vision is a longer term one that allows us as a region to have more sustainable options, both for sheltering and for permanent supportive housing, is what you're saying.
That is one probable outcome of the transition.
Okay, I think that's a good outcome. I mean, it's not one that I'm as familiar with. I mean, I sit on the CDBG subcommittee, and yes, the allocations that we have made have been primarily to support the sheltering operations. But obviously, my commitment to Washoe County, because I'm also a resident and a taxpayer there and do all the things, is that I want to make certain that they are successful. So it's not a wash our hands of it kind of thing and walk away, but we'll continue to be in partnership with them, although they will have the lead role. And I think they have some other resources that can be brought to bear that the cities do not have. You know, the ability to use tax or tax dollars towards a thing, which cities do not have under Nevada law. So, okay, I appreciate that. And yeah, status quo for this month, and you'll have an update next time out. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I am eagerly awaiting that contract as well. I too know that the county has the resources and the expertise, aside from hiring, which we're all struggling with, to really get their hands around the details of this. I'll tell you where part of my concern is, and we've heard it highlighted on a couple of fronts here today. My concern is the barriers to entry and the low barrier shelter of which the CARES campus and VOA is doing now, which is critical to our region. My concern is and we're seeing it at a number of facilities, when we put all sorts of criteria on the front end, you restrict a large amount of the population from accessing particularly emergency sheltering, and maybe for all of the reasons, the funding reasons, you want a better outcome, you need to screen more. But we find that to be one of the biggest barriers, is putting too many restrictions on the front end. And so emergency sheltering, we all want permanent supportive housing. We all want everybody to have a place that is not an emergency shelter, but we are not going to kid ourselves that the emergency shelter doesn't play a significant role in this community as the first rung on the ladder. It is the first rung on the ladder, and this board and this community took a gigantic step in the right direction to make sure that we could bring people into an adequate facility to begin to triage them out to more appropriate housing. That is probably my number one concern, is that the intake of our main shelter with the largest population, which is men, we are not restricting anybody's access to emergency sheltering as we bring this contract forward. I can't say that enough.
And I tell you, it's exciting to see what starting to form. And I say this, we've been working on this for a lot of years, but I want to say thank you for the vision you just set, and for everyone staying at the table to have that conversation, because I strongly, though I don't disagree with what you're saying at all, but I would also say strategically looking at helping people for the long term. If we cannot figure out how to help keep them in their homes or have homes available for them, then we will continually have exactly what we have with new names, new faces, for a very long time. And so I think it's very wise, strategic, and it does take probably the right steps. I don't even know if I know that, none of us we're walking this out, but I do think it is a wise point in that direction, but without leaving what we're doing behind. And I don't think that's what was said. So I don't think it's saying, but I cheer on the conversation you just said. That would be an incredible outcome for multiple reasons, and it keeps us all at the table, all very responsible, and all working together. So thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Madam Clerk.
All right, Madam Chair, we're on item 11, board members' announcement and updates.
Thank you very much. And if somebody has a pen, because here it comes. Okay, so we heard a lot of discussions today. I think we need a lot of updates on a lot of things, particularly as we do transition into a new chair and into the county taking the lead role, and the things that I heard today that we need an update on at our next meeting. We need an update on the tiny homes facility and their intake process, and maybe some reasoning. I too have some concerns with the rate in which they are bringing people into that facility. And again, I'll go back to my comments. I understand that screening under some circumstances is absolutely appropriate, but we want to make sure that things aren't so restrictive, particularly as government bodies that have invested property and significant dollars into that facility, that we are getting people with a roof over their head. That was the intention. If we could get an update on the Village on Sage Street, I don't think they have any capacity available, but even if it's a written submission by the folks at the Community Foundation and VOA as to kind of what their operations, what their how many people they have there, and what I think it's $400 a month for those individuals. A laundry update. I think we need a laundry update, and hopefully it will be that there's a facility that has been put in place or a partnership with one of those that do the laundering. There are some great community groups that are doing that, but we need to solve the laundry issue. Cooling and heating regional plan, getting something sketched out as to how we are getting our hands around as a region, what facilities in all jurisdictions that we have for our houseless neighbors or those that need heating and cooling, and how we are communicating that out to the community, to those that need it most. Staffing updates. I think we need another staffing update as to caseworkers. Staffing updates also as it relates to river rangers, additional staffing that the county is bringing on, the city is bringing on, and VOA and other operators are bringing on to address the issues that we continue to face. Item 6, a safe parking update. I know that we got a great update today. If we could get another one of those. I know there's been some outreach to the Flood Management Board and as regards to a safe parking facility may be there, and my understanding is they are not interested in doing that. So I'd like an update on any safe parking facilities, as we do have 100+ people living in their vehicles in Reno alone. I think the last update we got was 150 from the city of Reno alone. So we need to get our hands around where we might be able to facilitate those in all jurisdictions, not just Reno, to maybe help solve this issue. If we could get a map of all homeless facilities, I'm talking about structures in our region, if we could pinpoint where our sheltering is, where our cooling or heating locations might be, we need to have a heat map of where all of our homeless facilities that we as jurisdiction support. I don't think we've ever kind of put pen to paper and put it all on a map to kind of see what's where and how accessible those facilities are as a region. Again, I know we certainly have a lot here in Reno, but we know homelessness spans the entire community. If we could get an update on transportation, we've talked about today some partnerships with RTC and some individuals I know through the city of Reno, but the Downtown Reno Partnership now has a shuttle as well, and how we are gathering as a region, how all jurisdictions are helping with the transportation. I think there's lots of great things going on there, but again, I just don't think we've communicated cohesively all of the transportation opportunities that are out there. Of course, we're going to have an update on the transfer of leadership to the county and what that looks like. We're going to have the update on the chair and the vice chair at our next meeting, which will be on Monday, August the 2nd, and it'll be here because we aren't transitioning leadership just quite yet. We're going to do that the following month. If we could also get an update, and I know you people are dying, everybody's dying right now at all these items, but it's really, really important. The next meeting, even if we need to budget 4 hours instead of 2, it is important that we get all of these things really well fleshed out, particularly as we transition. We need to talk about responsible giving in our region. I think there are great community entities out there that have a significant role in which they play. How do we do that in the most effective and responsible way? It was talked about today about, going down to the river and dropping a box of crackers without some sort of organization behind it is really not particularly helpful, and maybe more harmful than helpful. Is how do we facilitate the giving at the appropriate location in an organized way? And I know there are health department issues with giving food, but how can we facilitate some great giving efforts, whether it's the faith-based community or community activist groups? How can we facilitate that at the Nevada Cares campus? If we can't bring a hot meal because of health department issues from somebody's home, can we do something where we support a small business who brings the hot food to the campus? And there's got to be a more organized way where everybody has a day and a thing, and it becomes more effective. And finally, getting an update on our phase 2 and phase 3 fundraising, again, has been going really, really well. Our community wants to be a part of this transformative way we're changing, addressing homelessness, and I think we need an update on that. And I think that was 13 items. Memories.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this will be both for this body and for our body. I'm interested to understand the limitations or constraints that ARP funds can be used to be directed at permanent supportive housing. So ultimately, you know, sometimes community members, well-intentioned and thoughtful, send articles or examples of facilities where they think they're doing it better or differently. And part of the constraints of what happened when the CARES campus itself was really birthed is it happened because of the influx of money from the CARES Act. It would not have happened, but also people don't fully understand that there were some significant limitations about dollars from the CARES Act. So CARES Act funds could not be spent for permanent buildings or structures, for example. They couldn't be used to, and I think some communities have stretched the limits of the legalities of it because some communities went out and, you know, they purchased a motel, turned it into housing. It sounds awesome, except that when you figure out a year from now you've been audited and you have to pay those funds back. And so those are some risks that I think that I was not real keen on as we developed our plan for this campus. And you know, for my part, the campus is going to be, when it's fully up and running and has all the nits worked out, I think it's going to be something that we can be thankful for and honored for our community to have. But permanent supportive housing is obviously the longer term and better solution. So I'd like to know what the ARP funds can or cannot be used for and how they might be best used for our most vulnerable.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have anything? So here, given the items that we have put on there, and I do think it's important that we go over all of these items, and I know we're putting a lot of things on the plate, but it is really important. We weren't able to have our meeting last month because there was an emergency meeting with regards to the reopening and the COVID, which had the prior CHAB meeting canceled. I would suggest, unless my members have an issue with that, that we start an hour earlier at our August meeting and we go an hour longer. So it budget for a 4-hour meeting on August the 2nd, so start at 8 and go until noon.
Will you bring some coffee and snacks?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Okay, Madam Clerk.
All right, we're on item 12, which is closing public comment, which we have none. So I'm just looking for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.